Hello and welcome back to my Java 8 tutorial series. This is the stuff from last episode, and if you haven't noticed, instead of using Sublime and Terminal in order to compile everything, I decided to switch over to Eclipse because that is going to make everything a lot easier. So now we're starting on episode 3. Last time we went over lambda expressions. This time we'll be going over another new feature added in Java 1.8, which were streams, which adds new ways to interact and sort and do a whole bunch of cool stuff to collections, which, part of the collections API would be array lists and stuff like that. And I introduced that stuff in my normal tutorial series in, I think, the generics episodes and Better Than Arrays. But without further ado, we can actually get started on this. Now, before we actually start dealing with it, we should actually make something we can sort. So let's make public static class person. Because a person might have several different things that they could have. So they could have a first name, last name. They could have an age. They could have gender, which in order to do that, we'll have an enum. So we'll have male and female, if I can spell it right. So we'll say in order for a person, we can have the string name. So I spelled string wrong, look at that. Surname, age, gender, and let's add public gender. So we'll say this dot first name equals name, this dot surname, this dot last name, equals surname, this dot age equals age, and finally this dot gender equals G. And just because I don't feel like doing something like this, I'm going to add a convenience method where it just has one argument for name. We'll say this name.split around a space. That would be easy to make more of these. And then we're just going to add a few convenience methods, which will be a public integer compare name. So we'll have person p1 and person p2. And what this will be, will just be you're going to return p1 dot first name dot compare, since string already has a compare method that returns a number depending on the comparison between the two. And we'll just add a few more, so we can actually, when we actually start sorting these things with the new Stream API, we actually have stuff to sort. So realistically, this can be used for anything, but just for an example, we're going to be doing this. So actually, we're going to do integer dot compare p1 dot age p2 dot age. And I actually wanted to make these static. Ooh. And we'll just do public static integer compare gender person p1 person p2. we'll just say return p1 dot gender equals p2 dot gender. We'll return 0. Else if p1 dot gender equals gender dot male, we're going to return 1. Else we're going to return -1. So basically, what compare methods do in general is that they will turn 0 if we just hover over this, we'll get the documentation compares two integer values. Values return identical to what would be returned by integer value of compare. That isn't very explanatory, now is it? So the value 0 if they equal each other, a negative value if the first argument is less than the second argument, and a value greater than 0 if the first argument is greater than. So we're going to say, okay, if they're the same gender, return 0 because it's equal, and if the first one is male, we'll return a greater number. Because not to be sexist or anything, just to make this tutorial easier, we're going to say the male gender will be sorted first, followed by the female gender. So in the main, we're going to create an array list of persons, and we're going to call it people. We're just going to import array list real quick. I'm going to add some people. So we're going to say people.add new person. And this is why I add this convenience method, so I can just say one name in one go instead of having to, split it up. We can say person.gender.male. Let's just copy this a few times. Except they're not all going to be me. Let's do other neat things. I don't know. Just, weird names. I don't know. We can do, I don't know. Coming up with first names is so much easier than coming up with last names. Don't you think? And something, I don't know. Yeah, that's a last name, except this is not a male, and I guess I should have a higher concentration of females. See, this is the fun part. No, it isn't. Yep, those are all legitimate last names. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of things. So at the end of this, we're going to say for every person in people, system.out.println p. And real quick down here, we're going to say, just so we don't get some gibberish, this.age plus this.gender.toString. So if we printed them out right now, if we ran the program right now, it'll just print out everything else. So I should change the age. Blah 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 blah. Okay, so now if we run it, you can see everything's, nice and working. So, if we were to sort these before, well, with a couple new features, we can say people.sort, and it asks for a comparator. And a comparator, that's nothing new. But instead of making like an anonymous inner class like we might have done before, we can use a different form of lambda expression. And this type of thing would be person : compare name. Now I can explain this. Basically what it's looking for is a comparator. So a comparator is a functional interface, and all it is looking for is a method that returns an integer and takes 2 arguments of something that is a super of person. What we're giving it is a method that returns an integer and it takes 2 arguments, which are persons. So that means we're basically giving it a reference to a method, and it's going to use that method in place of a comparator. So basically internally it's creating a new comparator, and the one method that the interface implements is being replaced with this method here. So there's a lot of inferred types right there. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, but thanks to Java 8, all that stuff is pretty much handled. Writing the code is a lot shorter. So if we run this right now, it'll sort everything by first name. So alphabetical order, blah 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 blah. There you go. Now suddenly, this gets more complicated if you want to do several other things. So let's say we wanted to sort it into a list of people whose last names start with W and who are older than 20. So that would require a lot more work. We'd have to say, if we want to do it the long way, we'll say create a new array list for this. New array list, say for person P and people if if P dot last name dot starts with W we'll say persons dot add P. Then we'll say for person P and persons if P dot age is less than 20, we can say persons dot remove P. And let's say we wanted a list of only the ages at that point. So then we would have a new array list. Or let's just say a list of only their first names. Oh, I didn't need to put that there. Inferred types and everything. And we'll say for person P and persons first names dot add P dot first name. And then we can just say system.out.println for every, we'll just go to this, for every string in first names, system.out.println the string. So after that long, complicated process, we can print them out and it'll give us all the first names of all the, what happened? Probably something bad. Oh yeah, because we're editing the list while we're putting it through there. So in this case, another problem with that is that we'd have to create another array list, persons2 dot add. So now if we ran it with the first name of every person who's terminated for system that have a print line. What should have? Oh wait. So right now it's looking for everyone whose last name starts with a W. So that'd be that person, that person. Oh, so none of them are older. So let's just say if let's just look for all the women. P dot gender equals person dot gender dot female. We're looking for all the women who is at least 20 years old, and it'll print off their first names, and it's only Becky. If we change this to 10 years old, we'll get all the first name of all the women. There, Emily, Sarah, Becky. Now there's a much easier way to do this now that we have streams. In fact, we can do all of this in one line and not have to create, well, we just have to create like an array list for this or something like that. But what we can do, we can say people.stream. So we're going to get this new stream. Now the first thing we want to do, we can get all the people who are female. There are several things you can do with streams, and all of them require these fancy new functions that are part of the new function API added by Java 8. But if we wanted to filter them out and only get people that are female, we would do a filter. This requires a predicate. A predicate is just something that takes a person, since it's an array, it's a stream of people. It takes a person in, and it will return a Boolean. So right here, to create a predicate, all we have to do is, put in a lambda expression for what it is. So that means it has to take a person as an input, and it has to return a Boolean. We're just going to say return p dot gender equals person dot gender dot female. And to make this look cooler, we'll just put this in parentheses. What? Oh yeah. What do you want this time? Predicate. Pretty sure that's what a predicate is. Maybe. Gosh, what do you want? Filter predicate. Function dot predicate. And let's go look at predicates. Yeah, it returns a Boolean after accepting type T. So this should be absolutely right, because it's accepting a person, because it's accepting a person as an input, and it's returning. Maybe we want to make these brackets after all. Okay, brackets it is. So right now it's that returned a different stream. So every time you apply one of these things to a stream, it's going to return a new stream, so you can keep doing things on it. A stream is something you can only sort through once. And so there are stream ending methods that you can do. So that's filtered it so it has only females. So next we can do is filter it again, so it only has people who be older than 10. So we'll say filter. We're gonna say input of person P. In fact, all we have to do is say P, because it knows because lambda expression have inferred types. You don't even have to specify person, because it knows that the only input it's going to have is person. So we're just going to return p.age greater than or equal to 10. So we filtered it again. So now what we want to do is turn it into a stream of strings of just the first name. Again, there's another method on streams that we can use, and that's map. And this instead requires a function, and a function is, again, part of the new function API. It takes a input to the function of type the first, and then it outputs the second type. So it's going to input person, which, because it's a stream of people, I mean to say. So it's going to input person, and it's going to output whatever we want else. So we're going to return p dot first name. So what that's going to do is create a stream of string, because it knows that. And just to make this, easier to see, so we're mapping, and then what we're going to do to this final stream is that we're going to say toArray. There is another thing you could do, but this is going to return an object array. So what we're going to do is do dot toArray, and it has an integer function, which should just generate an array. So we should just be able to say blip, 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 blip. Return new integer array. No, it's just going to be a string array. So the integer function, we're going to look up the integer function again, because that's the fun part. There's a lot of fun parts. It's going to, all it does is apply, it takes an integer value, and it's going to return type R. And the type R we want it to return is just an array. So we're going to say, instead of this blank argument, it's going to be, we just pass L. And what I expect it to be passing to there would be the length and the provided length. So we're just going to say new string array of length L. So now we can say string array names equals that. So we're going to say names. So wow, wasn't that a complicated process? Which it most certainly is a very complicated process, especially if you're not used to Java 8 by now. But if we just printed this out real quick, we get the same exact thing we had last time. But instead of all this long process of creating several different things, what this offers to us is being able to code things a lot more concisely and letting the virtual machine do most of the work for us, because this is doing a lot of the stuff that this does, except we have to type less. But it also is also a good lesson of how to do everything else with streams, because streams, again, is one of the big things that Java 8 added. It allows you to go over things quickly and conveniently. So step by step, we're going to take this collections, and with any collection you can turn into a stream. And again, streams are just objects, and they contain this data, and you can only go over that stream of data once. So what this filter does, it goes over the stream once, and it said over every single index it applies this predicate to it. And a predicate, again, part of the function API. The function API is just a very large library of functional interfaces. And when we went over lambda expression, a functional interface, again, is just an interface where you only need to implement one method. So all the predicate does, it accepts an input and returns a boolean. Now, so that means this is going to accept an input of person P and return a boolean. And this is the boolean that we're going to run over every single index in this first stream. And we're going to say, and if the boolean is true, it's going to filter it into the new stream that it's going to return, and if it's false, it's going to filter it out. So we're going to say, hey, we only want, I'm going to say, okay, now that you're at this person in the stream, if the person matches this conditional, put it in the new stream. So then it goes to the stream once and does it, and returns a new stream with all the females. So with the new stream, again, we're going to filter and say, okay, for this person, for everything in the stream, you're going to check it against this conditional. So if that person is above or equal to the age of 10, put it in the new stream. Then we're going to say, okay, map because what filter does, it returns a stream of the same type. But what map does, it allows you to convert the stream of this certain type to a new type. So we're going to say, okay, for every single type, the person P in the stream, we're just going to put that in the new stream in the form of just its first name. So at this point, we have a stream of strings containing the first name of every female that's age is greater than or equal to 10. Then we're just going to say toArray, which is, we're going to convert it to an array, and this again just accepts, it's asking for an integer function, and an integer function it takes an integer as an input and returns anything. But what this is specifically asking for is an integer function that returns an array. So we're returning specifically a string array, since that's what we want to return. So we accept the length it wants, and we're putting it into a new array of the length that it wants. So that's our output of this whole monstrosity. So if you're looking at this, you'll be like, well, I know this is simpler, but this requires a lot less resources, because creating streams is a lot less intensive than creating entire array lists, since streams have the added conditional of, hey, you can only go over this once. As soon as you go over this array, as soon as you go over it, we're just going to delete it. But while all these array lists are still going to be in memory by the end of the program. So it's a lot quicker. So toArray, while these are just stream altering functions, toArray is one of the stream ending functions. So after you do this, you can not do anything else with the stream. The other ones, stream ending ones, there's both toArrays. There's collect, I believe. Yeah, the collect functions. Yeah, the collect and the collect functions, I think, are the main ones. There are a few others that don't have to do with streams that much, more about objects. But it's mainly collect will return an array list, a bit more complicated, but the toArray will return an array instead, which you can turn into an array list too, but yeah. So what we could also do, a stream, is that after we do this, we could do sort. We can get a sorted stream. And we can do the same exact thing we did earlier, and we can say, okay, I want you to sort these. We're going to sort these by first name. So now if we run this again, we can say now the list is going to be sorted. So it's going to be Becky, Emily, Sarah, sorted by first name. So it's really easy to add something else in there. But in order to get to fully grasp, you really need to understand the lambda expressions. This type of lambda expression, this type of lambda expression, this type of lambda expression. There are several different ways in order to do that. So Java 8 added a lot of stuff, needless to say, and they all pretty much rely on lambda expressions, which is pretty good once you get to know them. But that being my short subjective input of the night, I'll say this is the end of this episode. I hope you know how to use streams now. What you can do is, again, just go to the Java docs online about the stream API. I mean, just doing dot, you can run through all the different things you can do with the stream API. It's really useful. It's really useful because instead of calling just stream, you can also call parallel stream, which means it'll do all this stuff, except it'll do it on it'll access multi-core processors, so it can do it a lot faster. But again, there are a few hiccups that you might have to deal with along the way. Like, it could be more difficult to, in my experience with parallel streams, they run a lot faster, but getting them to sorting them properly you can get into just a bit of trouble. Like filtering and mapping and everything else is really easy, but sorting, because at the end of divvying up all of it to different processors, putting it back together, that sorting it is a bit difficult. So this has been episode 3 on the Java 8, going over streams. Hope you learned something. I learned something, yeah. So I hope you learned something too, and good night.